guys, did you hear about that lawsuit against a bunch of top universities claiming that they're part of a cartel? If so, and you want to know more about it, in this video, what I'm going to do is try to talk to you guys a little bit about what's going on, because I don't know about you guys, but when I first saw this headline, I was kind of confused, and I even read a couple of articles and I was still kind of confused. So hopefully I will be able to break this issue down for you all and also offer some of my perspective as an independent college consultant and test prep tutor who works with a lot of students applying to these colleges every year. If you're wondering who I am, my name is Brooke. I've been an independent college consultant and test prep tutor for over a decade and a half. I have a couple of courses for the SAT and the ACT. You can check those out at SupertutorTV.com. I've coached students to perfect scores on both tests. I also have a couple of math books for the ACT. You can check those out at Amazon.com. And we're on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So make sure you plug in with us, as well as subscribe to our channel by clicking subscribe below this video and to our mailing list, SupertutorTV.com/subscribe. Cool. Announcements over. So essentially what's happening is there's some former students from several elite universities that are saying that member colleges of this 568 Presidents Group, which include many elite universities, namely Columbia, Dartmouth, Duke, Georgetown, MIT, Northwestern, Notre Dame, Penn, and Vanderbilt, as well as Brown, Caltech, Chicago, Cornell, Emory, Rice, and Yale. The last ones on that list are less guilty, apparently, than the first ones, by the way, that split that I made. And what this lawsuit alleges is that all of these member colleges have been colluding together as a cartel. And if you're wondering what a cartel is basically an organization that price fixes. And what is price fixing? Well, it's the idea that if you all get together and you say, this is how much we're going to charge, then you can overcharge for something because you don't let natural competition overtake the marketplace and settle prices in so that there's competition and hopefully a lowering of prices, right? So they're not fixing the price of admission. These colleges can set their sticker price, whatever they want to set, right? So whatever they're charging to their full paying people, they get to figure out. But when it comes to financial aid packages, these schools are allowed to agree upon what the formula is for figuring out what a family's ability to pay is. So all of these schools have agreed to use the same formula to figure out how much they expect your contribution to be. And thus, when they, quote, meet need, because all of these colleges not only are need blind, but they meet need, when they meet that need, the number is essentially whatever it takes to get up to your expected contribution, right? And that expected contribution would be the same. So if you got in, say, to Duke and you got into Northwestern, the idea would be that they would essentially cost around the same. However, not every elite university is part of this group. Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, they're not part of this consortium, okay? So my first problem with this is saying that they're like a total, price fixing cartel is a little bit weird to me, because there's other competitive schools that are clearly not a part of this consortium, and their cost of attendance, I think, is probably in the same neighborhood as these people. I don't know that getting rid of this group is going to massively make college more affordable. I guess that's the head scratch to me, is they're saying they're price fixing and like they're really keeping these prices high for everybody who's getting financial aid. And that's why they're doing this. I'm not so sure that the harms that they're claiming are real harms. So I'll start off with that claim. But I do believe that they did tap into some issues here, some legal issues that have allowed this group to exist. So the first thing is this 568 Presidents Group exists based on an exemption to antitrust law that was established by Congress. And this exemption says that to participate in a group like this 568 Presidents Groups, and it's the 568 exemption, you must be need blind in your admissions policies in order to then consort with other groups and, come up with a single method that you pledge to use in order to determine the need of a particular family to pay for your college, okay? So if you're going to fix that formula along with other schools together, if you're going to join together and do that, you have to promise you're going to be need blind when you admit students. Now, what is need blind admissions, and is it really need blind? And that's really where this lawsuit gets into things, and it's kind of interesting and fun to talk about. So need blind admissions is this idea that when you apply to a college or university, they do not look at your financial aid materials. They do not look at your ability to pay. They're not going to look at your FAFSA when they decide whether you get in or you don't. After they decide to admit you or not to admit you, then they throw your application to financial aid, and then financial aid comes up with a package and they ship it your way, okay? Now, that being said, there are several loopholes that many of these colleges have engaged in, and this lawsuit is quick to point them out and say, because of these loopholes, in their need blind policies. These colleges and universities should not be privy to this congressional exemption, and they're, in breach of this law, and they actually are taking into consideration the ability of students to pay. So the first loophole for saying that colleges aren't need blind is the fact that they favor donors. And this is totally true, by the way. Colleges and universities that are elite typically favor children of donors. And when I say donors, this is like big time donors. This is like higher than the Rick Singer level of donors. So if you are a billionaire and you give $1 million or $10 million to a university, your kid might get special consideration for getting into that university. But the way that I see it, this loophole isn't a bad thing. Now, is it in breach of the idea of need blind? Yeah, it means you're not need blind. If you give a leg up to kids whose parents give $10 million to your university, you are not being need blind. That is true. But it's also like, where's the money going to come from if you cut off the hand of the billionaires who are donating to these colleges and universities, right? Allowing these like billionaire kids into your college also provides a swath of money that helps finance this entire need blind world. The need blind world couldn't exist without the billionaires pouring the money in. So I don't necessarily have a problem with this, but is it need blind? No, it's not need blind, because if you give millions of dollars, yes, you get a leg up in the admissions process. Next accusation that they had was that some schools look at the ability to pay when letting kids off the wait list. So in particular, the lawsuit pins Penn and Vanderbilt as participating in this process. So they're like basically need blind, but then when it comes to the wait list, they stop being need blind and they suddenly start looking at the effect on the bottom line because they're trying to balance the budget for the year, right? And that's something that has been claimed that it's not truly need blind. If you look at people off the wait list, that's not 100% need blind, you're cheating, okay? Agreed, that could be cheating. Next on the list in the bullseye is Columbia. And according to Columbia's website, it has a School of General Studies, which comprises of more than 2,500 undergraduate students, that is not need blind. It is need aware. So what is the School of General Studies that makes up about 30% of undergraduate students at Columbia? Well, it's a school that targets non-traditional students, so students who've taken time off or who want to be part-time students. And I think it's a great college for students who are non-traditional students that want that Ivy League education. It's a great option when I have students who've come out of the military or things like this. But this lawsuit criticizes it because not only does it enroll a less wealthy and more socioeconomic diverse student body, but because it's need aware, even if they meet 100% of demonstrated need, it's not playing by the rules of this congressional exemption. The next point that the lawsuit makes is they criticize these colleges for using something called enrollment management to essentially actually assess need and not be need blind during this process by using complicated spreadsheets and graphs and charts and things like that. Okay. So essentially the idea of enrollment management is that a lot of these top colleges are engaged in this process of identifying what your ability to pay is without actually necessarily totally knowing what your financial situation is. And they do that by guessing based on other parameters in your file, right? So it's basically they're not need blind, but they're pretending they're need blind because they didn't look at the bottom line number on your FAFSA, right? That means they could look at things like your zip code, how wealthy the high school you go to is, the topic of your essays, whether you have teacher recommendations of a particular type, what kind of student you are, where you're from demographically, et cetera, et cetera. Essentially, they're playing Moneyball, right? Using statistics to be smarter than a human would be to predict end game financial profiles of the school using soft metrics that kind of can be predictive of that, right? Which is kind of like cheating. Yeah. Now, that being said, I will say you are never going to completely get a need blind school because inevitably everything that correlates with a factor that helps you get admitted, or the majority of things that help you get admitted. The only thing that I think can help you get admitted that doesn't correlate with wealth is the sob story. And what I mean by the sob story is you can write an essay about your amazingly really hard life and how you were homeless and like a rags to riches story. You can't write that if you're super rich, at least not if you're honest. But you can if you're poor, and that like I overcame adversity story, that grit story, that is gold in college admissions. And that's the one thing that doesn't correlate with wealth. But about everything else that can help you get into elite colleges pretty much correlates with wealth. Wow activities, Things like curing cancer, having really crazy research opportunities correlates with wealth. Test scores, grades. Remember that private schools tend to have inflated GPAs much more than public schools. So that's going to correlate with wealth. Teacher recommendations tend to correlate with wealth. I did a whole UK story on that if you want to get into that. Essay topics correlate with wealth, as a Stanford study found. So lots of things that help you get into college correlate with wealth. And besides, what are elite universities if they're not elite institutions? The whole point of these institutions is to be elite. And it makes sense that students who were given all the silver spoons in life are going to be at a higher academic level, more likely than students who were not given those advantages, right? Privilege begets privilege. Begets privilege. So it makes sense that the students who get into these top colleges had a lot of privilege. And yes, need blind admissions at a certain point is kind of a joke, and it never will be completely need blind. Like, that's never going to happen. But what I'm going to say about this lawsuit is the big irony of this lawsuit is the colleges and universities that they're going after are actually the best colleges and universities for students who don't have a lot of income, because they're trying the hardest of everybody in the playing field to try to be at least a little bit more equal and to try to help at least more people than the people that are running colleges in the middle. Take, for example, Tufts University, which is need aware, not need blind, right? The median income at Tufts is around $224,800 per family, okay? If you look at the median income listed on all these colleges that are being accused, we see numbers more in the $150,000, $170,000 kind of range, okay? So that's a full like $75,000 difference almost between a need-aware college that's really looking at the bottom line and need-blind colleges. So if I have an issue with this lawsuit, it's that people are getting angry with the colleges and universities that are actually doing a better job providing aid to students than a lot of other colleges that are just need aware. At the end of the day, when I look at the end result, all of these colleges that are, quote, need blind, even if they're not 100% need blind, and that are, quote, meeting 100% of need, are still giving a boatload more aid than many private universities that are competitive, that might not be ranked as highly as these schools, but they are still doing a better job. But there you go. There are my thoughts. What do you guys think of all this? Let us know in the comments below. And thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys like this video. If so, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, where I have lots more commentary on issues like this. Take care, you guys, and I'll see you next time.